Again, we've got a very special hour in the works, bringing you tonight Ask the Governor, live from the Ewing studios of New Jersey 101.5. Governor Christie using his regular radio show tonight. Tonight, we listen in.
Super Bowl predictions and
dreadfully,
bets. Yeah,
dreadfully wrong.
I was a little more wronger than you were. I had the Broncos by 7. You had them what, by 3?
Yes.
Yeah. How was the game?
Stunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you all out there, I'm sure, listening, watched at least some of it.
Yeah.
It was stunning to me. I mean, I thought I wouldn't have been shocked to see the Seahawks win. I think they're both good teams, but I never expected either team to blow the other one out, and it was really, it wasn't competitive. I mean, you know, almost from the first play of the game when they snapped the ball through the back of the end zone, and if you think that was kind of like the Bronco high point, you know, went downhill from there. You know,
it all was downhill. But
the great news about it, Eric, was that first of all the weather was great yesterday at the stadium. Yeah. We set a record, according to the NFL, in terms of screening, security screening, and bringing in the 82,000 fans in the quickest time it's ever been done. Heard no complaints about that. We originally, the NFL estimated that 8,000 to 15,000 people would take mass transit. As it turned out, 28,000 people took mass transit to the game, and 34,000 people took mass transit from the game afterwards. And the amazing thing about that was on Saturday, we had only sold 10,000 train tickets for Sunday. 22,000 people bought tickets on Sunday. So, you know, we had to do some scrambling last night, get some buses in to help move a few thousand people.
A lot of people at Secaucus Junction that were not happy.
Well, listen, there's no doubt. But when you think about it, we moved 34,000 people between the stadium to Secaucus Junction and ultimately to wherever their next destination was in 2 hours and 5 minutes. And that's pretty good work. And, you know, especially when the original NFL estimates were less than half of that. So, you know, when you're waiting in line for a train, it doesn't matter how long you're waiting or how many people are around. You want on the train, you want to get home, especially after that game. But I'm really proud of the work that we did. And New Jersey, I think, put itself really on the map really well with the way we conducted ourselves in the Super Bowl yesterday. Security worked well. Everyone got there, got safe, was safe, went home safe. No major incidents, a few arrests, but, you know, less than we have at a normal Jets or Giants game.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the new developments that have been going on, and I want to talk a little bit about David Wildstein as we open up this program. Your former appointee to the Port Authority claimed through his lawyer that he's got evidence to show that you knew about the lane closings in Fort Lee while they were happening. Your office put out a pretty strong response to Alan Zegas' letter.
Yep.
What in particular do you dispute in Wildstein's account at this point?
Well, Eric, listen. Let's make one thing clear right off the bat, which I think is the most important issue. And the most important issue is, did I know anything about the plan to close these lanes? Did I authorize it? Did I know about it? Did I approve it? Did I have any knowledge of it beforehand? And the answer is still the same. It's unequivocally no. And in fact, no one's ever accused me of that. And that's the thing that I think the people in New Jersey care about the most. Now, when did I first know about the lane closures?
Yeah.
You know, the fact is that the first time this really came into my consciousness as an issue was when Pat Foy, the executive director of the Port Authority's email about this incident, was leaked to the media and reported on. And that was the first time that I got a sense that there might be some issue here.
And who brought that to your attention? Was that staff?
No, it was news accounts. I mean,
but you read them personally, or did somebody bring it to your attention?
No, I read it.
You read it. Okay.
I read it in the Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that day then, when I read that Pat Foy was saying, I didn't know about this. It wasn't cleared through me. It, you know, whatever else he said in that email. That's when I asked my chief of staff and chief counsel, I said to him, hey, would you look into this and see what's going on here? Now, if prior to that, I know prior to that there were press accounts about traffic issues up there.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone, you know, if I either read that or someone said something to me about traffic issues up there, it wouldn't have been meaningful to me because I didn't know that there was any problem up there, because I didn't know that we had actually closed lanes up there before that. So my dispute is twofold. First, to make clear to everybody in the midst of, all the things that were reported over the weekend, that nobody has said that I knew anything about this before it happened. And I think that's the most important question. Secondly, that when this first became an issue for me, because let's face it, Eric, there's traffic every day at the George Washington Bridge, at the Lincoln Tunnel, at the Holland Tunnel. I hear those reports on the radio. We all hear about them. That's not something that rises to the gubernatorial level. When this first became clear to me that this was a potential issue was when the FOIA email was put out. Now, like I said to you, there were press accounts before. Whether, I read any of those, and if I did or heard anything from anybody about traffic, it would not have been meaningful to me because now we're looking at it in the prism of knowing everything we know since January 8th. Back then, this was not a major issue. And it became one to me in terms of finding out what was going on when the FOIA email came out.
So today is the day that subpoenas were due to be answered in the legislative investigation. We know some of those who were served were granted some extensions. Have you seen any of the documentation that has been gathered to this point?
I have not. The governor's office has started to produce things today. We did not ask for an extension. We started to produce documents today, but we're doing so on a rolling basis. We're working as hard as we can to get through because there was a lot of stuff asked for from us. But we didn't ask for an extension. We've started today on a rolling basis to produce things to the legislature. But I have not seen any documents that were produced by anybody else, no.
Are you not the least bit curious to know what's in some of those documents?
Well, I mean, listen, here's what I'm curious about, Eric. What I'm curious about is what happened here. And that's why I've authorized an internal investigation, as I talked about on January 9th. And we've hired a law firm to come in and do that internal investigation. They're working really hard. They're working diligently. And I can't wait for them to be finished so that I can get the full story here.
And this is the internal investigation of your staff to determine who may have known what.
And to get into the situation. I mean, we're going to try to get as much information as we possibly can by interviewing folks and reviewing documents that are in our possession or we have access to. And then they're going to give a report. And so that's what I'm really anxious to find out about.
Is there a timeline on that?
My timeline to them is as quickly as possible.
Because you made it clear during that press conference, if you find out anybody else on your staff lied, that there are going to be repercussions.
They'll be fired. I mean, listen, here's the thing that I find so interesting, because what's going on now with all this other stuff is just a game of gotcha. When did I first learn about this or that? Well, the fact of the matter is, I've been very clear about this. Before these lanes were closed, I knew nothing about it. I didn't plan it. I didn't authorize it. I didn't approve it. I knew nothing about it. Thereafter, and I've said this a number of times before, it became clear to me this was an issue that I had to have somebody look into when the FOIA email came out. So in the period of time before that, there were press accounts. Things could have been mentioned to me about traffic at any point in time. None of it was memorable to me, Eric, because I didn't know there was any issue. So what I'm curious about, I'm sure the documents will eventually, I'll get a chance to look at them. I mean, I don't even know if we've gotten copies of them at this point in the governor's office because they're produced to the legislature. But what I'm really curious about is the folks that I've hired. We hired a national law firm to come in, being led by a former assistant United States attorney who is leading an internal investigation and has done a lot of interviews, I know already. And I want to find out what happened here so I can make changes if necessary. If there's anybody else that needs to be held to account, I'll hold them to account. And then to make changes, hopefully, so I can assure the people in New Jersey that something like this won't happen again.
Are you confident at this point in your day-to-day operations that there is nobody on your staff right now that is lying to you?
There's been nothing that's been brought to light so far that would make me believe that anyone is. But I'll tell you something. I'm not warranting anything anymore after what happened before. And so I want the internal investigation to run its course, and I don't want to make any prejudgments on it, pro or con. I think it would be wrong for me to do that, both for the people who work on my staff and for the people who serve me.
The there's probably nobody who knows better than you how this whole process plays out in terms of legal terms. You were the United States attorney before you became governor. Nobody has prosecuted more government corruption more successfully than you have. So I'm going to ask you to put kind of your prosecutor's hat on for a second. Do you see, as a prosecutor, possible criminal charges against somebody like Bridget Ann Kelly or David Wildstein?
You know my standard answer on this, and I'm not going to deviate from it, which is I hated, when I was U.S. attorney, when politicians would give opinions about what should be done or not done by a prosecutor while they were in the midst of doing their work. And I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to sit here and give opinions on that. One, because, quite frankly, Eric, I don't know all the facts yet. And so for me to give an opinion would be irresponsible, not knowing all the facts. Secondly, that's not my job now. And it's not appropriate, I think, for me at this point in time to comment or give opinions on what the U.S. Attorney's Office should do or might do. I just think it's wrong. I hated it when I was U.S. Attorney, and I'm not going to participate in it. And it's not a dodge on this particular instance, because if you've listened to me over time, when they've asked me that regarding other people, I've said I'm not going to give opinions on that. I just think it's not appropriate for me to do that regarding others, and so I certainly am not going to do it regarding, folks who were previously associated with me.
My last question is this. I mean, this has obviously taken a toll on your family. This has got to be hard on your kids who are seeing and hearing and some of what people are saying about you. What do you say to them? What did you say to your kids, and how has your family been through this?
Well, first off, my family's great. And I'll tell you, yesterday, we were all at the Super Bowl together. And my son, Andrew, who had been away during a break from school to go skiing, I saw him for the first time in a week this weekend. And he's my oldest. He's my 20-year-old who's a sophomore at college. And I put my arm around him. I said, "Are you doing okay with all this?" And he said to me, "Dad, stop asking me that question. I'm fine. I'm fine, and don't worry about it." So my wife and my kids, they know me, and they know there's nothing to be worried about. Because I told them the same thing that I just told all the people who are listening tonight, is that I had nothing to do with this. And I'm so disappointed that this has happened. But I'm also determined to get to the bottom of it and to fix it once and for all if I haven't fixed it already by the actions I've already taken. And then to move on to do the job that the people in New Jersey elected me to do, which is to try to continue to control property taxes, to try to reform education, to try to create jobs. I mean, I had a meeting today with the Senate President and the Speaker to talk about our agenda as we move forward. And we had a really good hour-and-a-half meeting today and talking about all those types of things and other issues that are on their agenda. So I appreciate you asking about my family. You know I love them, but they're fine. I mean, the fact is that things happen like this in public life sometimes. You get disappointed by people. There are down moments. And I'm certainly not saying to anybody that any of us in my family have enjoyed this. But they also know that Dad has a job to do. And my job is to be governor of the state of New Jersey for the next 4 years. And I'm going to do that job. And I'm back to work, Eric. I mean, I can't afford to allow this to dominate my time the way it dominates the time of some folks in the media and some partisans. I got to do my job every day. When the Super Bowl was going on yesterday and we're trying to figure out how we're going to deal with 34,000 people moving out of there, I'm on the phone with my chief counsel, with the DOT commissioner, with the head of NJ Transit, with my authorities unit chief to say, what's our plan going to be, guys? The thing about this is while it dominates lots of other folks, it can't dominate me because I have the responsibility for 8.9 million people. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let anything get in the way of me doing my job. I took an oath a couple weeks ago. And so what the people in New Jersey need to know is two things about this. One more time. First, I had nothing to do with this. No knowledge, no authorization, no planning, nothing to do with this before this decision was made to close these lanes by the Port Authority. Secondly, that while I am disappointed by what happened here, I am determined to fix it. I've told people all the time in this job, I can't promise you that we're going to be perfect. But what I can promise you is we're going to do our best, and when there are mistakes, that we're going to do our best to fix them. And that's what we're in the process of doing. And sometimes it's going to take a little while, Eric, you know? But here's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want to have some internal investigation that doesn't get to the bottom of this, and then we find out more stuff later. I've told these guys, be thorough, be efficient, so we get to it as quickly as we can, but get me the story as best as you can tell it with as many folks as we can get to cooperate with talking to us.
Well, let's talk to some folks. 1-800-283-1015. And let's begin with Bob in Toms River. Bob, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Bob.
Good evening, Eric. Good evening, Governor.
Good evening, Bob. How are you tonight?
So far, so good.
Okay.
I'm hoping you can help me.
Let's see if we can make it better.
All right. My son is a high school senior at Toms River High School East. He has an IEP plan, and he's interested in being an auto mechanic. Back in his sophomore year, they put him in the auto body welding program for his junior year as a prerequisite to see whether he was interested in automotive. And then in his senior year, they put him in the first year of the automotive program, which he's in now. We've been told all along by the vocational school and by Toms River High School East that even though he's graduating this year, he can go back next year for the second year of the program at no cost to us. I had an IEP meeting this month, or in January, with his counselor, and we found out at that time that they're no longer doing the Plus One program. If he wishes to continue, I would have to pay $3,000, or he'd have to come back next year as a super senior, which means he could go through all the pomp and circumstance and walk across the stage and everything with his class, but they wouldn't give him a piece of paper. He'd have to come back and take one class next year, because he'd still be considered a enrolled student in order for him to go to school. And I verified this information with the assistant superintendent of the Ocean County VOTEC, Nancy Weber-Lofert, and she said, well, the reason the Plus One program was canceled is that the state is no longer funding it. Well, I think it's an unfortunate thing because automotive isn't the only program. There are other programs. You got kids that are in their senior year thinking, oh, I can come back next year and finish. And now we're finding out, surprise. I mean, fortunately, we found out in January. I'm trying to see what I can do. But, this is crazy. I've written your office and the Department of Education.
Well, I'm glad you called tonight, Bob. A couple things first. One, for the last 2 years, I've increased aid to education to all the school districts in the state. And so it's hard for me to understand. I can tell you this. I certainly didn't make any conscious decision in the budgetary process to cancel the Plus One program. So one, I'm at least curious about that. Secondly, we want to get to the bottom line here for you and for your son to see what we can do to help. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask the folks at the Department of Education to give you a call directly tomorrow. We have your information, and as Eric often tells you, that's why we ask for your contact information when you call in, so that if I don't know the answer to the question off the top of my head, we can get somebody from my staff to call you back. So we'll have folks call you back tomorrow and get to the bottom of it and talk to the folks at the Toms River Board of Education. But I can tell you that I don't recall making any conscious decision to reduce or cut the Plus One program. Now, it may be that the Toms River Board of Education has decided to do that. And often we're the scapegoat who gets blamed for things at that level. But it's an interesting question, and we'll get back to you in the next day or so with an answer, hopefully, that could be helpful for you and for your son.
Carol Ann in Rahway. Carol Ann, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Carol Ann.
Yeah. Hi, Governor. Long-time supporter.
Thank you, Carol Ann.
And I'm very sorry to hear you're going through this tough period right now. I'm sure you'll rise above.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. My story, Governor, is this. My husband and I and 3 children, we own a small home down in Manahawk in New Jersey. It's a summer home that we have, and it was, destroyed by Superstorm Sandy. And as you know, secondary homeowners didn't get much support, so we literally, through friends and family and out of our life savings, to be honest with you, we restored our home. That was done May of last year. My husband and I, we were faced with a very important decision that we had to make, that we could possibly rent it and maybe recoup some money, for the winter rental. We made that decision, and it was the worst decision, Governor, we have ever made. The situation right now is absolutely maddening. We rented to a family who, we are landlord number 4, by the way, okay, that they have scammed. They had no intentions of paying us. They've been in our house, Governor, since December 9th. They've given us fraudulent checks. The man has been up for grand larceny, but somehow released by the police. We're not getting any answers, Governor. I'm paying the electric bill right now to keep them warm and comfortable, and I've been told that I have to continue doing that. It's going to take 3 to 4 months to get them out. And wait, I have one last thing to tell you. I managed to talk to the landlord number 3. I can't find landlord 1 and 2. This is the saddest thing. He's a Vietnamese, he's from Vietnam. He's a merchant. He owns a nail salon in Manahawkin, okay? They rented from him prior to me. Took him 5 months to get him out. They destroyed his home, and they are in arrears 4 months of rent. I said to Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee, why didn't you file a complaint, a suit, the police? He says to me, I can't. I'm afraid of retaliation. Mr. Governor, this is unbelievable that this is happening to my family, to this poor merchant. These people are bullies. They know the system. They are the children of this tenant and landlord slanted laws that we have. Jim Gerhardt did aired this 2 mornings last week. He got an unbelievable response. Governor, trust me. If you look at these laws and you hear the landlords, you will see what we're going through. These landlords are literally going through. I have a coworker out of pocket $10,000. They leave right before they're going to get evicted. They're gone, and you can't get money from a stone. Everybody says, well, you file a form. For what, Governor? What are you filing forms for? They have no money.
Yep. Listen, Caroline, a couple things, and leave her on if you would. Oop, we lost her. All right, Caroline, you're going to have to listen. First thing is, we're going to get the Attorney General's office to call you tomorrow to talk about this and bring in the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office if need be. Secondly, I think you're right about our landlord-tenant laws, and there's something that needs to be looked at because it is oftentimes much too slanted against the landlord in the state. And so that's something that we really need to look at. And your case brings that to bear very, very vividly. And the fact is that, folks like this who perpetually take advantage need to be dealt with by law enforcement. And so that's why we're going to have the Attorney General's office call you and try to help you in that regard. So I apologize for the situation that you and your husband find yourselves in. It's a sad story, but we're going to try to help and see if we can. And I appreciate you calling in tonight and asking the question because this is happening to more than just you. I know out there, so we're going to have to try to see if we can deal with it.
Let's talk to Robert in Bloomfield. Robert, you're next on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how are you?
Good evening, Robert. How are you?
Not too bad. A little bit sore from the snow shoveling, but overall okay.
I hear we're getting more tomorrow, Robert, so
that's
get the Bengay and limber up, buddy.
Mr. Governor, I would like to revisit a thought that's been floating around the northern New Jersey area for quite a period of time.
Sure.
And that being the idea of permitting casinos to develop within the Meadowlands or Xanadu area.
Well, Robert, here's the thing. The state constitution says that casino gambling can only exist within the confines of Atlantic City. And that's been the law of this state since the constitutional amendment was passed to allow casino gambling in the first place back in the 70s in Atlantic City. So to do things up in the northern part of the state, we'd have to amend the Constitution. That can only be done by the state legislature. Now, when I became governor in 2010, I said that I would give Atlantic City 5 years with a lot of help from us, which we've been giving them, a lot of help with casino deregulation and a number of other things that we've done, support for the industry down there, to try to get themselves back on their feet in an acceptable way before we would consider casino gambling anywhere else. Well, this is the last year of that plan that we're going through. And so we have an obligation, I think, to evaluate what's happened in Atlantic City and to see whether or not it's in the best interest of the state to move forward with casino gambling in other parts of the state. But that's something that we probably won't consider until the end of this year. It's an agreement I made with the Senate president when I first became governor and the speaker at that time, Sheila Oliver. So the time is coming up now for us to make a reevaluation. And with New York deciding they're going into casino gambling, that puts a whole new coat of paint on the barn, so to speak, for this issue for northern New Jerseyans. And so this is going to be an issue that I would think probably near the end of this year we're going to have to start discussing in earnest and decide what to do with. I told the people in South Jersey that I would protect Atlantic City for a period of years, and I told the people in North Jersey that I would keep an open mind after that time about gambling up in the northern part of the state. And so you're going to see this issue coming to the fore, I would think, by the end of this year. We need to evaluate what we're going to do and what's in the best interest of the state. And so I think it's it's certainly something that is a possibility.
Take you back now to the conversation. Ask the Governor live on 101.5.
John Hoffman, the Attorney General, texted in and said, of course, we'll get right on Carol Ann's landlord-tenant complaint. So, Carol Ann, if you're still listening, the Attorney General's office will call you tomorrow. I just heard from the Attorney General himself, and they'll get on it tomorrow and work with you on it. It sounds like an awful situation, and we want to try to help.
Okay. We have another Carol Ann in Tom's River. Carol Ann, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie.
Hi, Governor. How
Good
are
evening.
you?
I'm doing good, Carol Ann. How are you tonight?
Okay. I just want to let you know I did vote for you. I think you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
But I do just have one question about the bridge.
Yep.
Why, when it was closed down and your traffic was backed up in New Jersey, our state, why didn't you call at that time to find out what the issue was?
Well, first of all, Carol Ann, I didn't know about traffic, as I told you. And as soon as I was aware of the fact that there was a problem, which was when Pat Foy's email came out, I had my staff say, go find out what's going on over at the Port Authority. Why are they fighting with each other over this? And what happened? And I was told at the time by my staff who got it from the Port Authority that the Port Authority was engaged in a traffic study to see if, in fact, all three of those lanes, and let's remember something for everybody out there. We did not close lanes to the bridge. All the lanes in the bridge were open. These were 3 toll booths that are dedicated just to Fort Lee, and that 2 of those lanes were closed, apparently, to do a traffic study to see if there was really a need for all those 3 lanes. That's what I was told at the time. So I did call Carol Ann, and I did ask my staff to find out what was going on. And that's what we were told at the time by Port Authority staff. That's what we were told. That's what the legislature was told when Senator Barone went and testified before the legislature in November. That's what we've been told all along until some of these emails came out on January 8th of this year that indicated that there were some, political overtones to this as well. So, as I said at the time on January 9th when I did my press conference, I still don't know whether there was a traffic study that morphed into...
You still don't know at this point whether there was a traffic study.
Well, what I'm saying, Eric, is did this start as a traffic study that then morphed into some political shenanigans, or did it start as political shenanigans that became a traffic study? There's information that was given to the legislature about counts of Easy Pass, about wait times and all the rest of that was done that at the time seemed to indicate to me that there was a traffic study. So my point is, that's what I was being told at the time. Evidence of that was presented to the legislature at the time. And it wasn't until January 8th when we saw some of the emails that and text messages that were produced that was the first time that, I was shown evidence that there was any kind of politics involved in this. So to answer Carol Ann's question again directly is, as soon as I knew that there was some issue here, I asked my staff to get to the Port Authority and find out what's going on.
Bridget Ann Kelly, you fired her because you said she lied to you. She was the one who sent that email, time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee. The Star-Ledger is just reporting now that the lawyer for Kelly is citing her Fifth Amendment rights and that she will not hand over subpoenaed documents to the Legislative Committee. What does that tell you?
Listen, it doesn't tell me anything. I know everything I needed to know from a point of employment for Bridget Kelly when she didn't tell me the truth. and I fired her. And what I've said as to all these people are that have lawyers now is that I hope they would share information with us, but I also understand that people have rights, and they're going to exercise those rights as they see fit and as their lawyers advise them to do so. I would hope they would share any information they had that would let me get to the bottom of it. But on the other hand, they have constitutional rights like everybody else, and if they're going to exercise them, there's nothing I can do about that, Eric. But we're certainly going to be asking and have asked for information from folks, and if folks give it to us, great, and if they don't, because they say they're exercising their constitutional rights, I don't think any of us can be critical of someone for exercising their constitutional rights.
Has your office now, the governor's office, not the campaign, been subpoenaed by the United States attorney?
Yes.
And when are those subpoenas due?
I don't know, but I know that the requests, and by the way, they did that, and I understand why they did it. We had already communicated to them that we would cooperate voluntarily. They decided to send a subpoena, and that's fine. We are complying with that in the same way that we'll comply with the legislative subpoenas. As we get documents, I don't know when the due date is, and I have to talk to the lawyers about that. I don't know. But we'll comply and cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's inquiry into this and comply with any of the documents that they've requested that are appropriate to turn over as quickly as we uncover them, that they're responsive, and then turn them over.
Danielle in Harrison, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Governor. I recently read about a board created by the New Jersey Senate to oversee a new health sciences partnership between Rowan and Rutgers-Camden.
Mm-hmm.
How will you influence Stephen Sweeney's plan to help the Rowan-Rutgers partnership gain powers of eminent domain?
The Rowan-Rutgers partnership having powers of eminent domain?
Well, yes. Although the bill is not available yet through the legislator's website, apparently this board has been created to help the Rowan-Rutgers expansion, and it seems that there are major concerns from the Republican Party that the bill will give an advisory board the right to exercise eminent domain. And it doesn't seem like this bill has been properly vetted according to the Republicans in the Senate, but apparently it's gaining momentum with Stephen Sweeney really leading the charge for it.
Well, Danielle, I'm not sure of the bill you're talking about. I'm not sure about institutions like this having power of eminent domain either. So, listen, I'll say about this bill what I say about all bills. If and when it makes it to my desk, it'll get a thorough vetting by the counsel's office, and they'll give me advice about whether they think it's appropriate for me to sign or not. I'm not familiar with giving a Rowan-Rutgers board the power of eminent domain, so that's not something that I'm aware of as we sit here. If it's just a proposed bill, it's just a proposed bill, and it's certainly nothing that Senator Sweeney has brought up with me in terms of eminent domain. So I don't really know what Danielle's talking about, but obviously, if a bill like that comes to my desk, I'll have to take a close look at it and make sure that we think it's appropriate for the purposes that we're trying to help develop, the kind of EDS and MEDS program down at Rutgers and Rowan in South Jersey, which is an important economic development program, an important education program. But I haven't heard anything to this point, Eric, about eminent domain being given to a university. I don't think that's the way it works.
Dorothy in Atlantic City, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Dorothy.
Good evening, Eric. Good evening, Governor. Governor, keep up the good work. I'm a strong supporter.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Always.
Thank you.
Don't change a thing about yourself. We love you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Okay. I applied for the resettlement grant.
Right.
Went down to sign the promissory note. It's not just for me. It's for a lot of people.
Okay.
I don't have a driver's license or a state ID. I don't drive.
Okay.
Okay. So I was going to opt out for the problem with my maiden and married name.
Okay.
But I did have a casino license.
All right.
Everything's on there. The state logo's on the front. Name, address, height, weight, everything.
Okay.
And they seem to have a problem with that.
All right. Well, guess what we're going to do, Dorothy? Stop right there. We're going to try to help you out here. The Governor's Office of Recovery and Rebuilding will give you a call tomorrow. The folks who work for Mark Ferzan, who are helping to administer this program, along with the Department of Community Affairs, they'll give you a call, and we'll try to work out this ID situation. Because if you're otherwise qualified for the resettlement program, we want to make sure we get you your check. So let me have them call you tomorrow. We've got your contact information, and we'll have somebody reach out to you tomorrow. Because if it's an ID issue, it seems to me there might be ways for us to work around that. If it's something more than that, then we can try to work with you too. But if that's all it is an ID issue, then that's something we should be able to work with.
Governor, we're getting a lot of email questions like this one from Amanda in Lacey about your plan to address the pension shortfall. You have talked about not making a full pension payment.
No, that's not what I said.
All right. So
it's not what I said. That's the way it's been characterized afterwards. What I said was that we're not going to be able to fund other programs that we all want if we don't address the exploding costs of pension payments and debt service in our state. And so what I said was that I want to open a conversation about how to deal with that. Never said I wasn't going to make the payment. I will make the appropriate payment to the pension this year as determined by the pension boards and by my administration. So I think people kind of got out ahead of themselves on this a little bit and a little bit over their skis. What I want to do is look at what more reforms we need to pass to be able to make these costs more affordable for the state. Because if we don't, Eric, we're going to wind up being in a situation where we're going to have to start to significantly cut spending in other areas, like education, like healthcare, like human services, because we can't afford this forever. And I don't think anybody wants increased taxes in this state. Because every time I travel around the state, all people say to me is, Governor, for God's sake, don't raise my taxes. So I was not saying I wouldn't make the full payment. What I said was, if we don't deal with these costs, we're going to have to cut in other places. And so I'm trying to open a dialogue. And I didn't put specifics out there in the state of the state because I don't want to put anybody in a box. This, like everything else, like the last pension reform, has got to be a product of negotiation. So I opened the issue. I identified the problem for the people of the state and the legislature, and now we need to work.
So what do you envision? Do you envision $1 billion payment, a $2 billion payment?
Oh, listen, last year's payment, I think, was $1.7 billion, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was about right. And what I said is we'll work with the actuaries to make the actuarially appropriate payment.
You know, you had Steve Sweeney that came right out last week and said, if we don't make this payment, I'll shut the government down.
I know. Listen,
did you talk about that with him when you met today?
I'm not going to talk about the specific things that the Senate President, the Speaker, and I talk about. That's always been my policy. What happens in that room stays in that room. But the fact is that I want to make clear to everybody who's listening that my goal is to control these costs and make them affordable so that we can invest in education, so we can invest in health care, so we can invest in human services, so we can invest in the things in public safety and the other issues that people are so concerned about. People want more cops on the street and they want the state to help pay. Well, if I continue to pay exorbitant amounts towards pensions, I can't. So that's what I was saying, and that's the way I was framing the issue. So I as always with this stuff, let's everybody take a deep breath. We got lots to do. We got a budget to present at the end of February 25th. And then we'll start the budget process with the Assembly and the Senate. And I'll work the negotiations with the Speaker and the Senate President, as I always have, and the Republican leaders of the Assembly and Senate. And we'll get where we need to get to. But it's going to be a process like it always has been. So let's not anybody get breathless about all this. That's not what I was saying. And if I wanted to say I won't make the pension payment, I would have said I won't make the pension payment. That's not what I said. I said we have to control these costs. To me, what that meant was we got to change the programs to control the costs, not just ignore the payment.
Kathy in Oakland, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kathy. How about you tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and
Good.
I've survived this winter storm.
Good.
Very quickly, my question is, I'm a single parent with 2 children for the past 14 years, and my cost of living expenses, percentage-wise, has exceeded my salary increases.
Mm-hmm.
So my standard of living has actually gone backwards rather than stay flat or move forward. Is there going to be changes in our taxes, our electricity costs, our heating costs, or possibility for, I work in the private sector, for companies to be able to provide raises to us so that we can level off and stop sliding backwards?
Well, a few things. Eric, here's the perfect example, right? I was just talking to you about how every time I talk to people, they say, don't increase my taxes. And like a clockwork, this woman calls in and says, don't increase, but can you do something about my taxes? She's not talking about raising them. She's talking about cutting them, right?
Yeah.
So this is the quandary we have in New Jersey. Well, but Kathy, let me tell you a few things. First is I think you're going to start to see energy costs decline if we in America continue to make use of the natural gas that is being found on a seemingly weekly basis in the area in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and other places where shale gas is coming. It's lowering the cost of natural gas, and that's going to lower the cost of electricity and heating. That will help. We have to do things like the Senate President has spoken about, like shared services, like eliminating these sick pay payouts, like more consolidation of towns to lower property taxes. Third, we've got to continue to have economic growth in the state. Now, we've had a lot of economic growth in the state so far in this year, and I'm hoping it's going to get even better. We're bringing more jobs into the state. The Economic Opportunity Act is helping us with that. That will help to raise everybody's standard of living. But she's right about the fact that the last thing she needs is for the government to come and take more money out of her pocket. And I have to be the person who stands up against that, and I will.
You mentioned shared services. It obviously did not make it through the Assembly in the last term. Senate President Sweeney says he will reintroduce it and may even make it more punitive to towns that are not looking at sharing services or even potentially merge. You have any more confidence that that is going to come to fruition this year with a new speaker?
I think we know that we need to do this. It's common sense. And so from my perspective, we need to really get down to work on this one this year, Eric. We really do. Shared services reform, end this user fee abuse in municipalities, sick pay reform. These are the things that are remaining from, here's an old phrase we haven't used in a long time, the toolkit, Eric. The toolkit.
Yeah.
All the way back from 2010. My communications director, Maria Camella, is twitching at the mere mention of the toolkit one more time. But we need to do that. And I'm going to be very focused on trying to work with that and come to a solution. I know I'm not going to get everything I want. I never do. But I'm going to try to be an impetus for this because it will really have an effect on property taxes. We have now slowed the growth of property taxes in this state to the slowest level of growth that we have had in 24 years. The task for the second term is to try to see if we can come up with ways that actually stop the growth of property taxes in the state. And that would really increase somebody like Kathy in Oakland's standard of living if she didn't have to pay an increase in her property taxes.
You know, you've laid out some pretty bold initiatives you did in your State of the State. You talked about lengthening the school year, lengthening the school day. You've talked about the shared services bill. You've talked about, funding other programs that are important.
Bail reform.
Yeah, I mean,
crime control.
There are a lot of things that are on your plate.
Yes, sir.
But you are still in the midst of, at the very least, a big distraction.
Right.
At the very most, something that may be more serious. Are you able to have the kind of dialogue that you need to have with the Senate President, with the Assembly Speaker?
We had it today. We met for an hour and a half today. And they and I understand that our job is to run the state of New Jersey. And that we need to do those things for the 8.9 million people who we represent and for the millions of people who voted for us just last year. And so I understand that it's a distraction. Believe me, nobody understands that better. But I think I was pretty clear on this in the beginning of the show, Eric. Like, it's not like I can say, okay, listen, everybody, I need a few months off to deal with this. I'll be back to you. That's not the way life works. And what the people in New Jersey need to know is I don't need a few months off to deal with this because they know the truth. They know me. They just reelected me resoundingly. And they know that I'm going to do this job. And that's it. And anybody who tries to distract me from doing this job is going to be disappointed because I won't be distracted. In the midst of all this, Eric, we had a State of the State address. We had an inaugural. We've rolled out the next $1.4 billion proposal on Sandy Aid. All stuff that we're going to be talking about this week. And we're going to just do our job. And I met with the leadership of the legislature today to lay out an agenda that I have and to listen to an agenda they have. That's what we would normally do at this time of the year anyway, under any other circumstances. So, no, No one's going to stop me from doing my job.
Bonnie in Ocean County, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. I've been out of school for over 20 years, and I go to night school for the GED program.
Mm-hmm.
And they changed the GED testing just recently. Now, I've been going to the classes for the GED, and they told me because I have accommodations, I wasn't able to take the old test, but I had been going to school for the old test. Now, I know I can be talking for a lot of people that was in the classes with me, that is there a grandfather in, we should be grandfathered in because we had been taking these courses prior to this new test. This new test has, like, trigonometry and stuff like that. Some of us have been out of school for over 20 years and don't even know, like, don't have the knowledge to even take this new test. Now, what about, like, I'm speaking for all of us, what about that? Like, is there some way that we should be grandfathered in to take that old test?
That's an interesting question, Bonnie, and I don't know the answer. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying in terms of fairness, but I also understand the question of should there be different GEDs for different people depending upon your age bracket or the number of years you've been out of school. So I can understand an argument both ways on this. The answer is I don't know whether there's a possibility for grandfathering, and we'll look into it and get back to you and find out from the Department of Education why the changes were made, and whether or not there can be some grandfathering provisions made for folks who are older students coming back. But this is another perfect example, Eric, of, like, there's lots of stuff going on in government that is the normal course of things, like something like this, that someone calls in on that really affects their lives. And that's why the show is so great, because I wouldn't have thought about older students and GEDs necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but this woman, Bonnie, brings it up, and so we're going to have somebody look into it, and it may actually lead to some positive change for her, or maybe not. But otherwise, without this show, it would be much more difficult to find out about these things.
Debbie in Stanhope, you're on Ask the Governor with Chris Christie. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Governor. We think you're doing an awesome job.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we thank you. We thank you. I have a question.
Yep.
Back to property taxes.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're trying to get them, down. And what happened this year is our taxes again went up. And I called our town and I asked them, why they went up so much. And they told me that even though there's a 2% cap, what is happening is that they are adjusting. They use a rate, and the rate adjusts to whatever number they need it to be to keep our taxes the same or increase them. So I want to know if that's true, and how is it ever going to go down if they can just, because they said that they have a fixed budget that they have to bring revenue in on, and that's exactly how they calculate our taxes for the year.
Well, if they're calculating the taxes that way, Debbie, then they're going to have some problems pretty quickly up in Stanhope. So let me have our local government services director, Tom Neff, look into that in Stanhope and get back to you. That's not the way, as my understanding is, it's supposed to work, that this is how much money we need, so we'll just monkey around with it until we get the amount of money,
figure out that number
we need.
Yeah,
that would not be the kind of responsible budgeting I think either I or the legislature thought would be happening when we instituted the 2% cap. So let me let Tom Neff look into it and then get back to you. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. We'll see what we can do.
So let's. We only have a few more minutes here left, and I want to wrap up a little bit with some of the Super Bowl stuff. So you heard an awful lot about the fact that New York was being the featured player, that it was being billed as the New York Super Bowl, and you were at the game, so you didn't see any of it on TV, but they might have mentioned that it was at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, but everything, even on the broadcast, was all New York this and New York that. If you had to do it all over again, would you still host the game?
Absolutely.
You think the economic benefit is going to be as big as everybody talked about?
I think it will be significant, yeah. And I think, a lot of the stuff that people aren't talking about necessarily in the media is there were a lot of people who came to New Jersey. Most of the things that surrounded this event were significant things for New Jersey. The team staying in New Jersey and their families. The teams practicing in New Jersey. Media Day was in New Jersey and brought everybody over to New Jersey for Media Day, which is a huge event. The commissioner had his tailgate party in New Jersey, and that was economic activity for our state. And so I think, and like I said, a lot of people stayed in our state. A lot of people stayed in New York. New Jersey could not have done this without New York. We wouldn't have had the capacity to do it without New York. And New York could not have done this without New Jersey because they don't have a stadium to play it in.
Funniest moment from your time at the Super Bowl? I know you were behind the scenes with a lot of stuff. Give me a story quick that you can share.
I'm trying to think which ones I can share that were actually funny. Listen, I think for me, one of the funniest moments of the whole preparation was doing a press conference regarding security, where the person from the state police said, "Hi, we're having a press conference from an undisclosed location." I thought, well, I know where we are.
So we bust everybody in with blindfolds?
Yeah, I don't know how it worked, and I don't think I really want to know how it worked. But thanks once again. It's another good show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Governor, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. And
Appreciate
thanks to News 12 New Jersey providing our pool video coverage tonight on the Town Square News Network.